What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back for another Talking Thrones Q&A video. I recently made a post on my YouTube community tab and I asked all of you to leave me some more questions because in my last Q&A video I was only able to answer so many. I received more questions this time than I did last time, so thank you all for that. I will start this video off by answering some of the questions that had the most likes, but I will also answer a few of the newer questions that didn't get as many likes, just to try and mix it up some. So let's get started right away. The first question that received the most likes was from Golden Lions. Why was Arya allowed to leave the Faceless Men? That never set right with me how they just let her go. Yes, she earned it, but still I thought it was a lifelong thing. This is a good question, but the problem with this question is we may never find out exactly why Arya was able to leave under those circumstances. I can certainly make a few guesses, but instead of me answering this myself, I found a quote from the actor and he gave his own answer for why he allowed Arya to leave. The actor who plays Jaqen H'ghar sat down with Access Hollywood and they asked him why he allowed Arya to leave Braavos alive, and this is what he actually said. To him, it was always obvious that Arya trying to be no one was like a teenager trying to deny who they are in order to be one of the popular kids, and that the Faceless Men are using that for their own ends. In my opinion, it was clear from the beginning. I mean, that's the reason he trained her. He didn't train her to become a Faceless Man and to stay in the House of Black and White and Braavos forever. I think that the Faceless Men, they certainly have an interest in what's going on in Westeros. Otherwise, why would he have just shown up out of the blue in Season 2 and picked Arya and offered her to train her? So there must be some sort of interest, and I think, yeah, what's the point of training her if she can't put that training to use? He also gave a reason why Jaqen smiled at Arya after she killed the waif. He said, he's pleasantly surprised to see that Arya took to the training so well she killed the waif. That's why in the end, when he realized she'd managed to escape the waif and kill her, he was also pleased because his student had excelled. When he first met her, he immediately recognized the potential in her. She posed as a boy and everybody but him believed it, and so already when she was a little girl, he could see that she had quite some talent to do these things, or to become a different person. And when she left Westeros, she was still a little girl, and now, over the course of her training, she's grown up, and now she goes back to Westeros and she's a totally different person. She's an adult. He's basically saying that he knew Arya would never stay in Braavos forever. When he first met her, he took interest in her because he could see that she was already trying to become someone else to hide her own identity. Then Arya saves his life, so he ends up becoming fond of Arya and he takes her under his wing, but he always knew Arya would eventually go back to Westeros to put her training to use. I'm hoping that did answer your question a little bit because I think his opinion would be better than anything I could have said. I'm sure the writers gave him some hint as to what the whole point of the training was. The next question is from Montez Hutchinson. How does House Stark produce heirs and not become extinct if Bran doesn't become Bran again? This is a very good question, and it is one that does concern me a little bit. I actually did make a video about this before, but in my opinion, the Starks are going to need to figure this out soon. Even if Bran does become Bran again, he still may not be able to have kids. We don't know exactly how bad his injury was. If Bran is completely paralyzed from the waist down, he probably can't have sex, but I guess we will never know until the show confirms or denies this. Personally, I don't think Bran ever will have kids, so in order for the Starks to produce an heir, it's going to have to come from one of the other Stark children. And this is where things can get complicated. The only member of House Stark that is sexually active right now is Jon Snow. I believe if any of them are going to produce an heir, it's going to be Jon, but the only problem is Jon has a bastard name, and he's about to find out he's actually a Targaryen. So if Jon and Daenerys do have a child together, they're going to need to decide which last name they will give it. They could technically legitimize the kid and give it any last name they choose. Jon is a king and Dany is a queen, so they do have that power to do this. But the question is, will they? I'm hoping the writers of this show bring this up in Season 8 because this should be a concern for House Stark. Even if Sansa and Arya had a child, their baby would typically carry the father's last name, but neither of them are in any kind of a relationship right now. With only 6 episodes left, it would be kinda weird if one of them all of a sudden produced an heir, and this is why I think it would need to come from Jon if they plan on answering this question before the series ends. I really don't know how the writers are going to solve this problem. I think in the Season 8 finale, they might imply that Sansa or Arya is about to be in a relationship. There might not be enough time for us to see one of them get married, and it actually makes sense. So they might just make it seem like Sansa or Arya is attracted to someone in the end. Then they could kind of leave us with an ambiguous ending. That would leave us thinking one of the Stark daughters will marry in the future and have children. I really don't know how else they would do this without it seeming rushed. But if you have any ideas, leave them down below. The next question is from Doc Robinson. I'm not sure if you saw my question yesterday, but I'm curious to know what is Davos' purpose. For a guy who supposedly isn't a fighter, he survived some pretty serious battles for some reason he's still around. What do you think? Davos definitely still has a role to play. For those of you that have never read the books, Davos actually has his own POV chapters in the books, and George doesn't just give those out to any character. Just as an example, Robb Stark was a king and he didn't have any POV chapters, and even Robert Baratheon was a king and he didn't have any POV chapters either, but Davos does. Davos has had his own chapter since the second book, so obviously Davos is more important than some people may think. He was more than just our eyes and ears for Stannis Baratheon. Davos has now come into his own, and I believe he will survive the entire series. He will continue to advise whenever he can, but in the end, I could see Davos having a much more powerful position. I've always had this feeling that the Seven Kingdoms will be split up and become independent again, and Davos will most likely have some sort of control over one of the kingdoms. He is the perfect man for the job in my opinion, and I think as soon as Circe is out of power, I think Jon will split the power up, instead of just having one person rule over everything. Once that happens, Davos would be rewarded for everything that he has done over the course of the entire series. The next question says, do you think people will know the truth about Jon being a Targaryen when he rides a dragon, or finding out he is unburned? If that's possible, of course. I have noticed a lot of people are still confused about whether Jon is fireproof or not because he's a Targaryen, but if you remember all the way back in Season 1, Jon actually burned his hand when he grabbed Lord Commander Mormont's lantern and he threw it on the White. Jon badly burned his hand when he grabbed that, and his hand is burnt even worse in the books. He is always having to flex his hand because of how bad it was burnt. So I have to say Jon is not fireproof. Technically, Daenerys is not fireproof either. The only reason why Daenerys has survived those fires is because of the blood magic involved. But typically, she should not be fireproof at all times, and I believe George R.R. Martin has said this on multiple occasions. But the question is, do I think people will find out Jon is a Targaryen when he goes to ride a dragon? I think that would be a cool way to do the big reveal in front of all the other characters, but it might not be that shocking now that we've seen half a dozen other characters get on a dragon. But if he rode it by himself, that would be pretty damn cool. However, I think Bran will tell Jon about his parentage in privacy. Then it's going to be up to Jon to tell everyone else. I think Jon may end up holding a meeting and letting everyone know, but it wouldn't happen until the very end. Jon being a Targaryen can complicate things right now, and he doesn't need any added stress when he knows the Night King is coming. So I think it would be in Jon's best interest to keep this a secret until the right time, but that's just my opinion. I do believe Jon will ride a dragon though. Now that there is only 2 of them left, someone will need to ride the other dragon in order to keep it from being taken down as well. And obviously, we have already seen Jon form a bond with one of the dragons, so I don't see why he couldn't form a bond with Rhaegal, who is named after his father, I might add. If Jon would happen to climb on Rhaegal before everyone found out he was a Targaryen, then yeah, I think everyone who saw him do this would be like, what the hell? How is Jon riding a dragon on his own? I would like to think they would assume he has to have some Targaryen blood to be able to do that, and I actually think that would be a cool way to do that big reveal. The next question is from Flash Wave. Could Cersei do anything in the final season to redeem herself? This is a good question that I have actually wondered myself. At this point, Cersei would need to go above and beyond to get any kind of redemption. She would need to fully support the North during the Great War against the Night King. During the Dragon Pit scene, Cersei said she would send all of her banners north to help them, but of course she was lying. But if for some reason she changed her mind and she decided to help Jon and Daenerys, that would definitely be a start towards some redemption. She would also have to be willing to step aside by forfeiting the Iron Throne. And I believe if Cersei sent help to the North, and if she stepped aside from the Iron Throne, they would let her live. They would allow her to go back to Casterly Rock and live out her days there. Jon and Daenerys were already willing to play ball with Cersei because they needed her help and her men to defeat the Night King. If Cersei would play ball, this could go a long way, but we all know Cersei will never play ball. She is already committed to screwing over everyone in her way. I don't see Cersei ever stepping down as queen. She will not give up without a fight. She could redeem herself a little bit if she really wanted to, but she never will. She will die before she ever gives up her position. She has made that pretty clear. The next question is from Raja Nora. How would you like Game of Thrones to end? Please describe how you wish it would end. I will try to sum this up as quickly as possible, that way I can answer some of the other questions, because I could go on for days about how I would like every storyline to be wrapped up. Basically, what I really want is for the ending to make sense. I don't want it to feel too rushed like it did during Season 7. I don't expect them to put a pretty little bow on the end of every character's story, but I hope they can at least end the main plot in a satisfying way. One thing I would like is for Jon or one of the other Starks to produce an heir, someone to carry on their name and the family's legacy, and this kinda calls back to the question I answered earlier, but it would be nice to know there will be a new generation to carry the torch. If Jon or Daenerys dies, I would like for them to have a child first. There will more than likely be a bittersweet ending, and if that means some main characters will die, then I would be satisfied if they left a child behind. History tends to repeat itself in this story a lot, so in the end I would prefer if the Night King is defeated in epic fashion. I don't want a peace treaty, because that would leave the window open for this cycle to continue in the future. I don't want them to try and reason with the Night King. Even if he isn't purely evil, he needs to be stopped for good. I'm sorry, but I'm a human, so I'm on Team Human. The Night King gotta go. I don't care what his intentions actually are. But worst case scenario, figure out a way to turn him back into a human again, if that's even possible. I'm expecting the Seven Kingdoms to be completely destroyed and in ruins by the end of the series, so it would be nice to know that the right characters are going to be left behind that can restore some sort of normalcy to the realm. The final book is called A Dream of Spring, and that title sounds like there will be some hope in the end. We may lose most of the characters we love, but I hope enough good characters are left behind to rebuild and make Westeros a better and more civilized place to live. Even if it takes an entire generation to rebuild, new laws will need to be put in place, but if people like Davos, Gendry, Brienne, and Tyrion are still alive, then I would be confident they would be able to do this. Westeros would be left in good hands. Those are just some of the things I would like to see in the end. The next question is from Josh, and he asked, what reunion am I most excited to see in Season 8? Thanks for the question, Josh. This is a pretty easy one for me to answer. The reunion I want to see the most is a full-on Stark reunion. I want to see all of the Starks in one room at the same time. This is something that needs to happen before the series ends. This is another way I want the series to end, is all of the Starks seeing each other one last time, especially Jon and Arya. These two have a bond that cannot be broken. Arya perfectly demonstrated this in Season 7 when she made sure Sansa wasn't about to betray Jon in any way. Jon and Arya's relationship is about as strong as all of the Starks' relationships were with their direwolves. In the books, Jon and Arya think about each other all the time. They miss each other more than any of the other siblings, and it will be really nice to see these two get to hug each other again. I can't wait to see the smile on Jon's face when he sees Arya still has Needle at her side. I feel like this will be one of the reunions that could actually make me cry next season, and I won't feel ashamed for doing so. Even Sansa said so herself. Jon is gonna freak out when he sees Arya again. I personally can't wait for this, but all of the Starks reuniting will feel very satisfying. It was the first family we were introduced to, and they're the family that I love the most. The next question says, do you believe that Varys betrayed Daenerys? How did Cersei and Jaime know Daenerys and Tyrion's war plans? Thank you for the question, Loana. I'm not exactly sure if Varys has betrayed Daenerys already, but I do believe Varys will betray her at some point next season. There were a few things that were said to Varys over the last 2 seasons that made me believe he will die because of a betrayal. The first person to question Varys was Kinvara, and she told Varys that as long as he supports Daenerys, then he has nothing to fear from the Red Priests. Then she also asked Varys if he wanted to know what was said in the flames, and this scared the shit out of Varys. I think Kinvara knows Varys will double-cross the Queen, and it has something to do with what was said to him in the flames. Varys' own death may have been revealed to him as a little boy, but he doesn't want to believe it. But when Kinvara mentioned the flames to him, this scared him because it made it even more real. Then Melisandre told Varys he was going to die in Westeros. She didn't say when, so technically he could die as an old man, but they wouldn't have had Melisandre say that to Varys unless it was going to happen soon. Varys' death will be connected to Melisandre or Kinvara, and I think he has known this ever since he was a little boy. This is why he hates magic and any red priest he meets. Daenerys also told Varys to never betray her or else she would burn him with her dragons, and I believe all of this is foreshadowing Varys' betrayal. To me, that just feels like the direction they're going to go in, but I could be wrong like I said. But I think this is a good place to stop today's video. I want to thank everyone for posting your questions. I really appreciate that. I will be uploading another video tomorrow, so I hope to see you all come back for that one. I also want to thank all of my new Patreon supporters. Much love to everyone that has signed up and helped this channel. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye.